So back in April of last year, the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors have approved a new election system, which is part of the Voters' Choice Act, which was passed a couple of years ago by our state legislature, that makes changes to our election system in an attempt to increase voter participation. But I don't want to talk too much about it. I'll let Rachel, the expert, talk about it. So please welcome Rachel Jung.
Thank you. Well, while we have that figuring out, let me go ahead and pass out a few of these postcards. I brought 70 copies. I don't know if we will have enough. I didn't anticipate on such a high turnout, but we have more in our office, so thank you. Please let us know if you need more copies. Again, like Jeremy said, is that all you got?
Oh, okay.
Yes. My name is Rachel. I'm an election specialist and a VCA outreach coordinator at Santa Clara County Register of Voters Office, and I'm here today to give you a brief public service announcement on the new upcoming changes that are coming to our county, Santa Clara County. This is going to be your new voting experience, and it's an exciting new change because this is going to be more accessible and inclusive for everyone. So let me go ahead and explain a little bit about it. I'll go ahead and talk about the background as to how this came to be, and then the 5 changes that comes with this new implementation. And then I will open up for any questions that you might have so that we can have a discussion. I know you don't really get to see a representative from our office very often, so this is a perfect opportunity for you to ask me any questions you might have as to how you might do voter registration or vote by mail ballots or anything that has to do with elections in general. Okay, so let me start by talking about the background information a little bit. So SB 450, otherwise known as the California Voters' Choice Act, was passed back in 2016, and then it was piloted in 5 counties in the year 2018. So it's a new model that will essentially modernize elections by letting you, the voters, choose when, where, and how to vote. So the 5 counties that it was piloted in was San Mateo, Sacramento County, Madera, Nevada, and Napa County. And then for this year, starting 2020, additional 10 counties have opted into this new implementation, and that includes our county and LA County and Orange County and many more. So although that's only 15 counties out of 58 counties total in the state of California, it is covering more than 50% of all registered voters in the state. So this is going to be a huge change for about more than half of the residents and half of the voters in the entire state. So although it's only impacting 15 counties, this is a grand difference in how we elect folks and how we vote in general, and we're not alone. Okay. So for our county, like I mentioned, this new implementation will be starting with the March 3rd, 2020 presidential primary election, and from here on, we will now only have this model as the election model. So this is a quick plug also that the primary elections for the state of California has been moved up from June to March. So this is the first year that we're actually implementing this as well. So let me talk about the 5 different changes that will be happening with the Voters' Choice Act. The first and the most important change is that all registered voter, as long as you're registered by default, now will receive a vote by mail ballot in your mail. So before you had to opt in, and to give you a little bit of context, our county is currently about 75 to 80% vote by mail voter already. So we are an overwhelming vote by mail voter county, and this will only really impact the additional 15 to 20% of folks who possibly never knew that this was an opportunity or never really bothered to opt in. But now this will really give every voter a chance to have a ballot at home as a copy for them to use to vote should they choose to vote by mail. The second change is that we are transitioning from a polling place model, which has been the traditional method that we've been using for over a century, to a vote center model. What that means is that we're going from 849 polling places to about 110 vote centers. Now I know that sheer drop in the number of vote centers available throughout the county might sound a little bit alarming because we're going from 849 to about 110, but here's the catch. You can vote at any one of these vote centers. Previously, you were assigned to a polling place, correct? If you wanted to vote in person, you only were allowed to visit one place near your residential address. And if you missed or did not go to that polling place, you were given a provisional ballot at a different polling place. Now, we are liberating you, the voter, from being tied down to one specific location and allowing you to go visit anywhere you want as long as it's within our county. You have 110 options. So that's a big win for all voters throughout. So you can now vote where you work, or near where you work, or near where you go to school, or near where you live. It's up to you, it's your choice. And the fourth change is that now you have more days to vote. So not only do you have more options as in locations and methods, but you have more options in terms of the length. So you will now have a total of 11 days, meaning 10 days before election day starts. You will have 11 days to vote in person. So these vote centers, some of them will be open for a total of 11 days. Some of them will be open for 4 days only leading up to the election day. But nonetheless, you will have more days to vote in person as well. That's including 2 weekends. So the fifth change and the last change is that there's same day voting, otherwise known as conditional voter registration, is here. And this is, again, another big win for all of the voters. Before, I don't know if all of you are familiar, but we had a 15-day voter registration deadline. So if you happen to turn 18 just 2 days before election day as a high school student, or you moved and forgot to re-register, you couldn't really vote as long as you didn't register within that 15-day period. But now, you don't have to worry about that. You can come to any one of these vote centers, now technically a satellite office hours, and you could register to vote then and there on election day and then cast your ballot. And we will process your information in the back and make sure that it is accurate and then count your ballot. But you no longer have to worry about being disenfranchised just because you didn't meet the bureaucratic deadline. So those were the 5 changes, and I'm really out here as an outreach specialist just to reach out to every people in our county, every voter who might have a concern, answer any of your questions, and really ask for your help in spreading this message. So we have an election coming up in less than 54 days, really, because now it's starting 11 days before election, 10 days before election day. So I'm out here asking you if you have any organizations that might benefit off of a presentation. If you belong to another community like this and you might want that in a different language, we also have bilingual election specialists who are capable of doing that. So just please reach out to me and let us know where we should go to do more outreach in person. Yes?
So where are the locations in our area? Is it schools? What general places in Evergreen are they having these voting centers?
So that's a great question, and I'll actually narrow down 5 nearest location to this library and send it to Jeremy, so maybe you can email it out to everyone. But this information is going to be made public on our website. All of the entire list of vote centers will be made public on our website within a couple of weeks. But basically, it will be most likely schools, libraries, locations that you are familiar with, churches potentially. Yes?
I hope you're mailing this to us. Not all of us trust these computers or the council department.
I'm sorry, can you
Are you
repeat that
gonna
question?
mail us the locations?
Yes, it will also be included in the county voter information guide, which is mailed out to you up to 29 days before election day, along with your VBM ballots. Yes?
This isn't so much about the mail-in vote process, but when do they count the mail-in votes? Because the popular conception is that they don't count the mail-in votes unless there's a problem, unless the people who actually go in and vote, there's an election too tight. And you just said 75 to 80% of the voters in the county are mail-in votes. So I'm curious, when do they count them?
So all ballots are only allowed to be counted legally on election day after 8 p.m. So all of your vote by mail ballots that we receive, all of the ballots that we receive at vote centers before election day, because now we have early voting, will be kept processed as been received, but it will not be counted officially until 8 p.m. on election day, and that's just the law.
That includes the mail-in ballots.
Correct, all ballots.
They're counted first, last, next day.
They're counted after 8 p.m. on election day. As we receive them, we process them onto our database saying this person has turned in their VBM ballot so that that person cannot go to a different vote center and claim that they haven't voted. So we process it, we physically open them and lay them out so that on election day, 8 p.m., we can feed it into the machine and actually count them.
Okay.
Yes. Any other questions? Yes.
On a vote by mail, how do you ensure that that person who's signing that document is actually the person on the,
That's a great question. Just in case anyone didn't hear that, he was asking about signature verification processes for our vote by mail ballot. So we do get access to all of your signatures from the DMV. We also have your signatures on file that you sign at the bottom of your affidavit, which is the voter registration card when you use to register to vote. So we have a history and a record of all of your signatures, even the verifications of it. So we look at your signatures and then verify them one by one. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
How are you gonna be able to do that with so many, 75% of the voters voting? How are you gonna look at them like this? I mean, how are you gonna do it?
That's just part of the process. We have hundreds of people in front of a computer doing that every day. That's just how we are supposed to count ballots. But the counting part, the verification is done by a human eye, but the counting is actually done by a tabulator, which is a machine. That's why it takes over in about a month to certify an election. You might get the results early, like on election day, but in order for us to actually certify an election, it takes many more days. Yes?
Is there a way to validate when your ballot's been checked? Because in the past, you could look up and see that your ballot's been checked. And will there be a way to do it with this system?
It will be the same thing. Whatever tool you used before, just like the Secretary of State's office website to check your ballot, what's the word, process or update, you could still use the same tool. Yes. These are some great questions. Any other, yes?
So what other safeguards are there so that no one goes to a voting center and votes in my name before I do?
And that is a very valid concern that I get every time I do a presentation, so thank you so much for asking that. So basically what changed that allowed us to allow a lot of the voters to vote at vote centers, and please excuse me for this long answer because it needs some explaining. So before, when we had polling places, the reason why you weren't allowed to go to a different polling place was because we have hundreds of different ballot types, right? Depending on where you live, what your language preference is, what your political preference is, you get a different ballot than your neighbor might. So because we have hundreds of different ballot types, there's just no way that we can have every single one of the ballot types pre-printed at every single location. And that's why we put them into a smaller group of locations so that only these people can vote here so that we can prepare by printing the ballots before the election for this group of people because we know who's coming in. So that's why before, when you walked into a polling place, you were asked to sign next to your name on a paper roster with your name, address, and your information in it. Now we have digitized that. So we have something called e-poll book, which is an equipment that we have purchased for this particular use. And what it allows us to do is to access your voter registration and your activity on that day that you're voting real time. So for example, you went to vote center A and you said, hey, I want to vote. I didn't receive my vote by mail ballot, so let me vote. So then they will let you register or check up your registration status and let you cast your ballot. And then you move over, walk over the next day perhaps, and then say, go to a vote center B and say, hey, I want to vote. I never got my vote by mail ballot and I never voted. Now we will pull up your written name on the record and we will see that you voted at this day, this time, at this location. And that person will verify to say, was this you? And if this person argues that it wasn't me, someone is causing voter fraud, then we will provide you with a provisional ballot and do an investigation. If it was you, then we will tell you, sir, ma'am, you have already voted. Are you sure you want to cast another ballot? Because it won't be counted. It's only the first ballot that gets counted. So then we're not going to fight with the voter on election day or whenever it is. We're always going to give you a provisional ballot, but we will always do a security check and always do what's the word? Verification before we count your ballot. And it's only your first ballot that gets counted only once. So it's the same case even if you were to cast a vote by mail ballot. So if you already mailed in your VBM ballot and now you go to a vote center and say you want to vote again, we will say, hey sir or ma'am, we received your vote by mail ballot on this day at this time. Are you sure that wasn't you? Yes.
I guess my question is, how do we ensure that somebody doesn't vote saying they're voting first, and then you say, no, we only count that first ballot that the pretend John Leyva voted?
So-
I'm not hearing an answer that allows me to to vote, regardless of what day I vote, know that somebody didn't steal my vote prior to me showing up?
So if you're using a vote by mail ballot, then we will do signature verification. If someone is claiming that was you, let's say someone stole your ballot from your mailbox and used your name and your ballot to vote, we will do a signature verification, it wouldn't match, and then we will give you your ballot and your chance to vote.
What happens to the
Designs.
first ballot?
I'm sorry?
What happens to the first ballot? Are you saying that every ballot is held in the person's name until it's verified?
Every ballot is printed with your name on it, with your name and your address, so we know that it is your ballot.
What he's asking is,
Yes.
the wrong person would have already done the voting on the first time, right? So now the first ballot will work, will be counted, or the second one? How do you verify?
Oh, if we look at your signature and it's not a match, we will notify you saying that you voted, but the signature did not match. It could be intentional because it was voter fraud, or it would have been like your signature changed and you just didn't know. So we're giving the voter the chance to edit the signature. So we do check with the voter first, and then if you claim that it wasn't you and you weren't the person who voted and you lost your ballot, then we will count the second ballot that you voted. So that's why there is a multiple investigation process goes in if your signature doesn't match or you claim that it wasn't you who used that ballot.
So
Yes,
you said that your name is on the ballot,
yes,
okay, and it stays with that all the way through?
yes. It's printed
I
with,
thought these were secret, I thought our election was secret ballot. So how does that, what's the implications as when people know what you voted for?
it's secret because we're not allowed to release your information to a third.
I don't care what my neighbor, knows who I vote for. I shouldn't care about if my government knows who I vote for.
There's
So-
really,
So that is the whole thing behind a secret ballot. It's not to protect you from your neighbors, it's to protect you from your government.
if that were to be the case, then there's really no way that we can track anyone from voting and anyone from voting twice or 3 or 4 times or registering in
That's
general.
why we need to have identification.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Well,
Any other questions? Yes.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I am here for this particular, temple meeting. Can we please move on?
Oh, excuse me. So first of all, this is part of our monthly District 8 Community Roundtable meeting. And this is a monthly meeting, and we decided to have this discussion with with Canyon Snow and the community group for the temple proposal, but we also have other items going on. So, these are our guests. We will respect our guests, and we'll go ahead. We have 5 minutes left. So we're gonna finish with our presentation, and then we'll go ahead and move on with the rest of the meeting.
Okay, I have a question.
Thank you. Yes.
What about the person votes first and then he changes the mind, he wants to vote somebody else?
So that actually unfortunately does not work. So you can't change your mind after you have already cast your ballot. So sorry. And just a clarification, if there is any question that is technical that I might not be able to provide you with an accurate answer today, I will make sure to get back to you or through Jeremy. Or you could directly contact me via the email that's on the pamphlet so that I can provide you with more detailed answer. Yes?
I have a whole issue with mail by ballot. I ran across a man one day who was bragging to me, he voted 4 times. He voted for his dead father-in-law. His 3 daughters gave him their ballots, they signed them and gave them to him. I wouldn't want anything like that.
So,
I think everyone should have to go down to the bus and
so unfortunately, elections aren't perfect. right? We do have security measures, we do have multiple personnel and technological safeguards in place. However, if someone wants to actively cheat and commit a voter fraud, we can't really stop them in the front end. We can stop them in the back end by making sure that we try our best to make sure that there is no voter fraud. But yes.
Voting one time, the people in the voting place had to ask the man to go and leave his wife alone to let her vote. She was mentally, her problem was mentally. It wasn't really honest. Okay, so he went to the booth and was going to offer. The people working there had pulled him out. But if it's done by mail, that can't be safeguarded against. So if someone is not in possession of their faculties, their spouse could vote for them.
Right.
That would happen a lot.
I totally agree with you. That is a prevalent problem. We do respect every individual's independent right to cast their ballot, which is why we just support accessibility assistance at all of these vote centers to exactly prevent that. Unfortunately, what goes in your home is something that is beyond our agency. But yes, that is a problem.
That's why the voting should be done at a voting place and not so much home, where all sorts of things can happen like that.
We'll take one more question.
Yes. Another question.
Last question.
Well, when we're on the subject, what documentation do you require at these voting centers?
Documentation as in your identification?
Yes.
We do not require any identification.
What?
When you register, so because conditional voter registration is available, when you register to vote, you might need to bring in your ID for your own reference to remember what you write down on the registration, but the registration is an affidavit itself. So when you sign, you're signing under the perjury that you have not said anything that is fraud. But we're not going to ask you to show your ID, that's just the law of California. Yes, no more questions? Oh, okay.
Well, we are really strapped.
Okay. Sorry, if you have more questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on that pamphlet. Thank you so much for your time again.